About 2 weeks ago, the president signed what is called the Genius Act, and that is a law now that will change the way that we looked at crypto, especially stablecoins. But here's the thing. It did not get a ton of media coverage because when anything passes on a Friday, for the most part, it gets buried under the headlines. We're all outside, there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening. But here's the thing, we pay attention to what is happening to our pockets. So what is happening with the Genius Act? How is it going to change crypto? What are the pros? What are the cons? And everything in between. So let's go ahead and break it down. First, let's start off with this acronym, which, to be honest with you, I didn't think they were going to be this clever, but it stands for the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act of 2025. Impressive. I will give them that. But for this, I'm going to start with the cons, the negative parts of it, and then end off with the positives. So there are two sides to this particular stable coin, if you will. In summary, what the bill does is allow companies to now offer stable coins and give some guardrails around that. Instead of, for example, just a gift card, you now have the ability to have a digital wallet and stablecoins. Now, a stablecoin is different than Bitcoin that can go from $100,000 to $70,000 in the span of a day, right, or really a year or a few months, because this is pegged to the value of another asset. In this case, it is $1. So if I have $5, I can now have $5 in Walmart coin or $5 in McDonald's coins or whatever it's going to be. So I don't really have to worry about losing the value of that particular coin. I may have to worry about losing the entire value in general though, and that brings us to con number one. You do lose some level of protection. Now, I did mention there are some guardrails. We'll kind of talk about that here in a sec. But when I have my $5 or $500 or whatever it's going to be in a bank, I'm FDIC protected. I have a lot of different auditors and rules that come with running a bank that I know that my money is safe. We saw what happened a few years ago with Silicon Valley Bank. When they collapsed, those people got their money within days. I mean, almost instantly, they got that money quick. If you have stablecoin in a company and they fall apart, how quickly are you going to get that money? It is not going to be FDIC insured. Is it going to be insured at all? If they get hacked, what is going to happen? You don't know. You don't know, and it's not going to be in your physical wallet where you can just have it in your pocket. You are depositing that money with them, and you're not, in most cases, I would assume, you're not going to get any interest. And let's say, I guess they're going to offer you some interest or some bonus by having that money with them. That's a risk that you could be doing by taking that. Now, are you going to put, tens of thousands or even hundreds of dollars in stablecoin with some of these companies? You might be thinking, no, but there's a reason as to why you might consider doing that here in the future. I'm going to get to that in a sec. The second part of this is there is a conflict of interest. This is something that I talk about. I wouldn't say I'm passionate about it. There are way too many people who are afraid of investing because you think you're going to lose everything in the stock market, or that it is way too complex to even get started. That is why I am proud to partner with Wealthmore, because working one-on-one with a financial advisor is just $25 a month, and the minimum is just $5,000. You can even message your financial advisor within the app. If you're not ready to work with a financial advisor, there is a free community that you can use within the app. You can download Wealthmore using the link right here and use the code BUILDINGBREAD today. All right, back to the video. But you decide that for yourself, but it's something we all agree on. I will say that, okay? The president does stand to profit from this, and I don't think that is great, okay? Now, he has already made, I think the estimate is up to $500 million from his meme coin earlier this year, and he does own a crypto company under the Trump organization. It was Liberty Financial. This bill allows him to continue to have a foothold in this space, and perhaps passing it on a Friday and kind of having it fly under the radar is another way to continue to do that. I don't think that is necessarily a good thing. So that falls under one of those cons. Perhaps my biggest concern, other than the conflict of interest and other than the lack of protection, is the consumer piece of this. I need you to walk with me for a sec, because this is a major theory here, and we have evidence for this. But here it is. Think of how streaming has changed in the last 10 to 15 years. Initially, streaming was a way to save money. Okay, think of something like Netflix, $6, $8, whatever it was. We went to streaming because cable was $150 a month, and you could go to streaming and say, look, I don't need all of that. I can go here and stream all the stuff from all the stations in one simple place for way cheaper. And then things got worse in that NBC had Peacock, and then Hulu, and then Disney Plus, and they bundled together. And then you had 5 or 6 or 7 different streaming services, and then you started to pay for them all, and then you realize, wait a minute, I'm paying the exact same thing, and now I have to go and figure out which movie is streaming on what service and when, and then it moves from Netflix to somewhere else. And now it's terrible, and it's everywhere, all over the place. YouTube TV started out at $30 a month, and now it's like $75 a month. That's a lot. Now, how does it have to do with stablecoin? Well, for example, now that all of these companies are now issuing stablecoins, what happens when McDonald's says, hey, look, we are only taking payment via stablecoin only. Chick-fil-A, we're only taking Chickcoin or whatever it's going to be. And all of these companies are only taking their own stable coin because they can get it faster. They're only holding their own currency, and that's the only way they're taking payment. Or that is their now reward system, where they're giving you interest or they're giving you bonus points or whatever by only doing it in that way. What happens in that case? And what happens when you have so much money deposited in these different places and you're not getting interest that is not being in the bank? There's another concern, because yes, you are going to use your money to eat, to shop, to get groceries and things like that. So it might make sense to have $300 or $400 in Walmart coin, or $200 or whatever it's going to be at Amazon, but that not being in an account that may be getting 1, 2, 3% interest or whatever, and it's spread out against 5 or 6 different places that you spend the most money. You're putting yourself at more risk, and you're not getting the interest. What happens in a case like that? What also happened in streaming? Remember that at one point there was a space where we were not paying for certain things. For example, Spotify, right? It was free, and in that exchange for that quote-unquote freedom, you would get ads. It's like, hey, look, I know it's free, I get ads, and I can pay my way out of it. I'll pay my $5.99, whatever it was back in the day, right? And I can pay my way out of it. And then it became, hey, everybody pays, and you still gonna get ads, and then you can pay out of that ad tier. Same thing with Netflix. You used to be able to pay for Netflix and you got no ads. And then it was you pay for Netflix and you still get ads, and then you can pay your way out of it. And that's kind of the cycle of where we are. So what happens when everyone has their own stable coin? What happens if they start to charge fees on you having those stable coins? And it's the only way that you can pay for those places. Because if we don't know anything else about companies and the way that they like to make money is, hey, set up an account here. You can only pay with our coin. And in fact, since you're already here, how about we charge you 2%, 2 coins, whatever it's going to be, just to continue to have an account here? Does that sound crazy to you? You might think it does, but is that not what credit card companies do right now? Some credit cards have annual fees, sometimes hundreds and in some cases thousands of dollars. If I am a company that has that type of leverage, maybe it's not a McDonald's per se, but what if it's a Delta, right? A Delta Sky Miles or something, some sort of program like that, where they have a Delta coin, and if you are in first class status because you have 2,000 coins with them, they now charge you to hold money with them. That is a possibility and a space we can run into, not next year, but 2038 or something like that. I'm just saying the pathway is there for something like this, because also banks currently charge overdraft fees and account fees and things like that. Why wouldn't companies, regular companies that aren't technically banks under this law, do something that is somewhat similar? So I think this opens the door to some shady things, Not in the next year or two, but definitely down the line. Same way, the exact same way that airlines didn't initially charge for bag fees and stuff, and now all of them do. They're going to start looking for ways to make margin, and if this is widely adopted, that could be a way that they do that. Now, what are the pros? After ranting about the doomsday scenario, what are the pros? One of them is at least a stable coin. I think, you're not going to quote unquote lose money, at least from, fluctuations. Now the money is stolen because of a hack, can't help you. You're not going to lose money from volatility. It's not going to go from $1 to 2 million or $1 to zero. It's going to stay stable, which is a good thing. So I do like that. I also do like the fact, I guess this would be number two, is it is taking crypto more mainstream. Kind of taking it out of the shadows, kind of off of the niches, kind of off on the side, making it more mainstream. It's also helping Bitcoin become more mainstream too. I do have criticisms of Bitcoin, but there's also pros and cons. It's also making things a bit more, a bit faster from peer-to-peer transactions. And I think there's going to be some very good innovations from it as well. So that those things are pretty good. Faster transactions is another thing that people keep bringing up as a positive as well. Also, an understated positive of this is it could rather help US dollar adoption too. There had been a lot of concern about people not using the US dollar and transitioning to other things. However, because we are one of the first, if not the first, to have one of the first crypto laws out there, this is something that now could help other countries start to adopt more of their stable coins, and by doing so, because it's linked to the US dollar, start. One other benefit that I think is really understated, because some people are worried about people getting off of the US dollar and kind of migrating to other places, is it could help for more countries and more people to adopt the US dollar. Because we are one of the first countries, if not the first country, to have a law of this kind. If more countries, I know India, I think Nigeria as well, is very big in the stable coins. If other countries start to buy, right, or start to hold stable coins based on this law because they know we have some structure, that means they're also by default, because it's pegged to the US dollar, also buying and holding US dollars. That is actually a very good thing for the US dollar. It kind of holds the US dollar position as the world's reserve currency. So if you are very concerned about global economics and the position of the US dollar, that might actually be the best thing of this entire bill that I don't think enough people are truly thinking about. So we might not be the physical dominant dollar, but we could be the digital one by being the stable currency reserve dollar of the world, which I can't be mad. It actually might be a very, very good thing. Now, all this is supposed to take place within 18 months, and I'll put it on the screen, 120 days of some other stuff. But again, I'll put the text on the screen because I don't want to read it wrong. But in either case, this thing is moving, and again, there are pros and cons, but it's an evolution. That evolution of business, you can say the evolution of capitalism or whatever it is you want to call it, that is my biggest concern, is how are these companies going to use stable coins? Are they going to adopt it? How are they going to adopt it? How are they going to monetize from it? Because you're not going to take it and just let it sit there. You are going to find ways to make money off of it. Charging fees, incentivizing people to use it, whatever way that you possibly can. And I'm telling you now, if Southwest Airlines went from free seating, everybody sit to wherever you want, to, hey, we too are about to charge for bags, we too are about to do assigned seating, start charging you for where you sit and everything else, and that was not a thing, it wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Okay, I saw this in my lifetime. That is something that can happen with stable coins if it is something that's widely adopted. And we have all seen how streaming has changed in the last few years from, hey, everybody is paying, you don't have to have ads, and now, hey, you paying, but you're still getting these ads anyway. That is something that can absolutely happen, and your money can be spread out across all of these different places and things not really be in your favor. in the way that they used to be. So just throwing it out there, giving you my thoughts, is obviously something that's brand new and has not taken effect just yet. But would love your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And if you want to know my thoughts about crypto and everything in between, you definitely want to check out these videos next.